Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the stream. Hope you had a great week. Happy Friday. Oh man, new Gorillaz music. I'm as happy as a clam. No joke. Today's Friday, so that's gonna end our week of what I'll say Higurashi hours that we were doing throughout the week, but we'll do it obviously tonight as well. I would say overall, let me see. I could probably time it out, right? How much extra Higurashi time did I put by doing this? It's about 45 minutes. That's about an hour. Hour 45. Hour 45. I can't do math. 2:45. 3, 4. 4.5 hours maybe? Wait, does that make sense? Somewhere between 2 and 6 hours. I gave up. But that's, it's a good amount of time. That equals like a really, whatever we did end up reading. Let me see. I'm actually curious. When did I do this stream? This was Friday. This was, or is this Saturday? Or is this Sunday? I'm looking at the VODs on YouTube. I don't even know. I'm so lost in the sauce when it comes to different weeks. The different days, I mean, of the week. It's been a long week, but it's a good week. You know what? Yeah, I give up. I'm looking at the wrong things anyway. But still, whatever it is, it was several hours, we'll just say, that we normally wouldn't have gotten to. Which is the equivalent of like one big chunk of Higurashi reading, in my opinion. So it's all for the good. So yeah, we'll read some Higurashi here, and then we'll switch over to Silk Song for the rest of the night. Silk Song is going to be the game that we play quite a bit this weekend. I know, obviously, the game's been out for a week and some change now. But last weekend, I had things going on, and I didn't really get to, really just bake into the game. I wholly expect a lot of Silk Song to be played this weekend. Obviously tonight, but I would imagine as well as tomorrow and possibly even Sunday to really try to put considerable hours into it. And I'm excited. I've been having a lot of fun with Silk Song. But that's to be expected, right? But never mind that. We're going to read Higurashi for an hour or so. And then we'll switch over. Minai-san. There you are. Out of breath, Fujita burst into the 1st Investigation Division's office and didn't bother with a greeting as he rushed toward Tomoe, who was sitting in her old seat as assistant director. A day had passed. A day had passed since Tomoe had returned Reina Ryugu to Hinamizawa, who are now the best of friends. Tomoe has gotten another young girl friend. That sounds, girl space friend. I probably thought about this before, but she's we had Izrina. It's the girl who died, Nagisa, and also Natsumi. The three, she's really good at befriending the younger girls. And I don't mean that in any weird way. Don't try to read into it in a weird way or anything. I'm just saying I think it's probably intentional. Probably a through line. Because I'm always on the team that the adults, most of the adults in Higurashi suck, right? So maybe she's supposed to stand contrast to that. And she's she's a strong woman. She's smart. She's intelligent. She doesn't take shit from anyone, really. So maybe she's supposed to stand contrast to the rest of the adults that just suck ass. On that day, Fujita had returned home from a long overdue absence. When Tomoe contacted him and informed him that Soma had sent over drug analysis results, he quickly came back to Kakuichi Station. I told him it could wait until tomorrow. His wife is going to be upset again. While still sympathizing with Fujita's wife, she secretly felt thankful that he placed a higher priority on his duties. And she lamented her own shallowness for doubting him when she first heard that story from Yamaoki. So how are the results? It's all right here. Go ahead and read it. As Tomoe said that, she handed him a bundle of copy documents that were sent over via fax. Since Fujita had no background in pharmacy, he was skimming it with a look on his face like all the technical terms were going over his head, but terms in there like unauthorized and grade AA hazard were enough to make him raise his head, looking astonished. Hold on. What kind of medical institution would be handing out drugs like this? Seems it's being conducted as part of a clinical trial, but based on what Natsumi-san told me, it was done without the patient's consent. I even doubted my eyes when I first saw that. The analysis results of the drug Natsumi was taking were beyond Tomoe's expectations. Oh, wrong button. As Soma stated that it had clear benefits for treating mental illness, but the main issues were the two items Fujita focused on. It was unlicensed and a grade AA hazard. The latter in particular makes it subject to narcotics control laws, which are even more strict than pharmaceutical affairs laws. Violators will almost certainly be charged and sentenced up to 10 years in prison. Even medical personnel need to go through rigorous examination and procedures to obtain the necessary license to handle it, so it's not something a general hospital has the authority to prescribe to normal patients. At any rate, what factors make this drug so dangerous? I realize that the component ingredients are hazardous, but... There are synaptic cells in the body that control transmission between the brain and nervous system. It seems this drug has a component that improves the efficacy of that ability. As a result, the speed of thoughts and information processing is temporarily increased, so the subject taking is able to sort out their mental state. Long story short, anyone taking this medicine will become an instant saint. Most causes of human stress occur when emotional thoughts can't be processed properly. For example, when they have to accept the unintended consequences of their actions, such as setbacks, discord, or conflicts with others, naturally people begin to feel bewilderment and regret. When they're forced to sort out and deal with those suppressed negative emotions, they begin to feel lost and suffer anxiety. That's stress. That stress is usually relieved when a solution is found and eventually disappears. For example, by diverting your attention towards some other activity, like exercise or watching TV, or by organizing your thoughts through conversations with your family, friends, or lovers where you look back on your troubles. Aside from that, worries can be settled as time moves on when you forcibly process diluted information left in memory and reflect on it in hindsight. In doing so, most worries can be eliminated before they get any worse. However, at times, people can end up developing negative thoughts and emotions as a result of their accumulating emotional distress and find themselves unable to see a way out. If the person has no hobbies, they can distract themselves with to turn... I think that's a typo. With to turn their mood around? I think that with is not supposed to be there. Nobody to talk things over with, and ultimately no way to leave the problem behind. They'll stay trapped in their shell. Hello, hello, hello. Good morning to you. In a broad sense, a mental state can be described as depression, and most of the mental illnesses in the world originate from that source. The means to medically resolve that mental state is often through medical counseling to assist the patient with unraveling their stagnant thoughts. or alternatively, to administer drugs with active components that improve neurotransmission capacity so that the patient themselves can resolve their mental problems. I don't think that's a typo.
患者の思考能力を上げて、その頭の中に溜まった悩みを一気に押し流させるということですよね。
Did I maybe just read it weird? Let's go to the tape. If the person has no hobbies they can distract themselves with to turn their mood around. Oh, you're so right. I think I read it weird. Did I not say a word earlier? I think this phrase, no hobbies they can distract themselves with. I think I didn't like process this correctly. But you're right. You know what, Higurashi? I formally apologize. I shouldn't have jumped to the conclusion that it was wrong. I didn't process the sentence correctly probably as I was reading out loud. Thank you for calling me out on it. I deserved. So basically, it means enhancing the patient's cognitive abilities so the accumulated anxiety in their head can be swept away all at once. Yes, that's right.
だけど、一番の問題は、この薬に抗精神伝達系の成分が多量に含まれていることなの。
But the biggest problem is that this drug contains a significant quantity of mental transmission inhibiting agents.
これのせいで、せっかく処理されたはずの精神情報が思考内に留まってしまい、理性で制御できる以上の情報量が本人の心に蓄積されてしまう。
As a result, mental information that should be able to process and move on from instead lingers in their thoughts, and an amount of information beyond what can be controlled by reason accumulates in the patient's mind.
それってどういうことなんですか?
What does that mean?
人間の理性ってのは時代劇でいうところの関所。
Human reasoning acts as a checkpoint like you see in historical drama.
悩みに関係するあらゆる要因をもとに構築された感情と思考が常識や道徳に従って正しいか正しくないか、それを判断して実際に発言や行動を修正する役割を果たすの。
Are the thoughts and feelings arising from their worries right or wrong according to common sense and morals? Reasoning plays a key role in judging their statements and actions and correcting them accordingly.
だけど、その関所で封鎖できる以上の情報量が来たらどうなる?
But what might happen when there's more information flowing through than the checkpoint can regulate?
感情に理性が打ち負かされるってことですか?
Then your emotions override your reasoning.
乱暴な例えだけど、実際にはそういうこと。
It's a crude analogy, but essentially yes.
おまけに、薬の組成式を見ると、抗興奮系の成分まで含まれているみたいね。
Also, looking at the composition of the drug, it apparently contains anti-stimulants as well.
これは感情の激発を鎮静化する働きがある一方、認識力に混乱が生じて妄想と現実の区別がつかなくなる副作用があるわ。
Though this has the effect of calming the subject's outbursts of emotions, it also has the side effect of disrupting cognitive function and making it harder to distinguish delusions from reality. In other words, no matter what outlandish results their thoughts and feelings may lead to, they can subconsciously interpret them as just a dream. It's not created from some crafty or cunning idea to justify themselves and avoid accepting any guilt. That thought process happens automatically and forcefully. Thus, even when the time comes to take responsibility, the subject doesn't realize they've committed a crime at all, so often deliberation can be time-consuming, and the results can be controversial even after a conclusion is reached.
なんか聞けば聞くほどにとんでもない薬ですね。
The more I hear about this medicine, the more ridiculous it sounds.
善人でも悪人に変えてしまえる。まさに悪魔の薬ですか。
It can turn good people bad. This is the devil's medicine.
まして、安易に感情の安定を得られるってのが危険性を増しているわね。
Also, quickly reaching emotional stability presents another danger.
その薬を飲めば楽になれるというのは、常習へとつながる最も自然な欲求。
Taking medicine like that can naturally cause you to develop an addiction.
ある意味で麻薬みたいなものだわ。
In that sense, it's more like a narcotic. Normally, negative emotions like anger, hatred, and resentment can be controlled by reason. But depending on a person's personality and the environment they were raised in, there are people out there who can't effectively control their emotions. And from the components of the drug, it can be inferred that the problem is their propensity to snap in an emotional explosion that can't be suppressed. In that case, it's something that should be corrected through education and interaction with friends. But when the symptoms manifested, the two of them would likely have taken this fast-acting drug to achieve mental stability. However, the stronger the clinical effects, the greater the degree of dependence and subsequent withdrawal symptoms. The so-called sudden emotional outbursts that are suppressed while taking the medication are immediately increased when the drug wears off. In that moment, they feel elevated levels of paranoia, the urge to cause destruction, and otherwise extreme ways of thinking. In other words, that temporary explosion of emotion presents an elevated risk of unexpected behavior.
その効用は強すぎるため、日本国内では確実に劇薬対象になると相馬さんは書いている。
Soma-san writes that its effects are far too strong, so it should be classified as a dangerous drug across all Japan.
欧米では使用禁止にもなったそうね。死亡者が出て。
It seems it's even been banned in the West because it caused multiple deaths.
しかも自己嫌悪から発展して自傷行為を喚起するおまけ付きか。
Moreover, developing self-loathing can even evoke self-harm.
でもこれで大体の合点がいったわ。
But I think this clears up a lot. Yeah. Tomoe recalled the scene immediately before she was attacked by Natsumi in the park, when she stared at her with cruel eyes and scratched at her throat. Tomoe quivered just remembering it. If she hadn't realized what was happening there and left Natsumi alone, she probably wouldn't have survived. And she commended her own intuition for noticing that she was scratching her throat, even from that distance.
そうだ。ひょっとしてあれも。
Yeah. Maybe that too. Tomoe suddenly thought of something. It was about the deceased nurse, Yuko Hiranuma, who was suspected of killing Kohei Sawamura. In that incident, Hiranuma seemed to commit suicide in resignation while surrounded by Hanjo and other detectives from Ibaraki Prefectural Police. But what if that was a similar case of self-harm? And what if someone deliberately gave her this drug beforehand?
自殺でも開始でもない。
That's just crazy enough to be
殺人だ。
true. Then it's not a mysterious death or a suicide. It's murder. The evidence of that was the drug-like component found in her stomach. They suggested it may have been sleeping pills or motion sickness medication, but she didn't understand the details of the analysis. But what if someone had administered this drug to the nurse and intentionally caused her to go out of control? The probability seemed high. She'd have to review the cause of death and autopsy charts again. But if that's the case, then who did it? And what on earth for?
どうします、ミナイさん。
So, what are you planning to do, Minai-san?
え
Huh?
決まってるじゃないですか。ローエル社ですよ。
It's obvious, isn't it? It's Lowell Inc.
この報告書には、この成分配置はローエル社が以前に商標登録したプラシルに酷似していると書いてあります。
The report states that the medication's composition is very similar to Lowell Inc.'s trademark drug, Placil.
ならば、
Placil?
そこに強制捜査をかければ、あるいは。
So if we organize a raid there, then
それはダメ。
no good.
行くにはまだ準備不足よ。
We're not ready for that yet. Tomoe immediately shot down Fujita's proposal. That was the first thing that came to mind for her too, but as long as the drug isn't licensed in Japan, Lowell Inc. could simply deny that it was brought into the country, and it would end at that.
それにゴグラの大学病院に強制捜査をかけるには裁判所と同時に厚生省の許可も必要となる。
Additionally, a compulsory investigation into the Gogura University Hospital would require court-issued warrant and explicit permission from the Ministry of Health and Welfare.
その際に今回の薬の情報が伝われば麻薬取締官事務所マトリが黙っていないわよ。
But if information on this drug makes it to the Narcotics Control Office, then NCO won't take it quietly.
下手をすればこっちの捜査活動に何かと横槍を入れてくるかもしれない。
If we do something wrong, it could turn this entire investigation sideways.
マトリと警察の仲の悪さは昔から有名だものね。
NCO and the police have always had a famously bad relationship.
だったらなおさら。
Then all the more reason to do something.
大事なのはこの薬が危険なことじゃない。
The important thing isn't simply that this medication is dangerous.
この危険を一体誰がどうやって持ち込んだかなのよ。
It's figuring out who on earth brought this danger here, and why.
ローウェル社か、あるいはその関連企業が国内への持ち込みに関わっていたという有力な証拠がね。
There's strong evidence that Lowell Inc. or someone affiliated with them brought it into the country.
以前のローウェル事件のこと、あなたも少しは知っているでしょう。
You know a little about the previous Lowell incident, don't you? Fujita didn't know it as well as Tomoe, but he was familiar with the case. At the time, they learned that human experiments were being conducted, but in the end, the higher-ups in the company couldn't be arrested. Then, it would be necessary to determine who inherited Lowell Inc. to its know-how, and find out how they may be connected to this hospital.
じゃあ一体どうすれば。
Then, what on earth can we do?
とにかくこの薬を持ち込んだ黒幕がいるはずよ。
At any rate, there must be some mastermind behind bringing this medicine here.
それを探し出すのが先。
That's the first thing we need to determine.
そのための参考人を今捜査本部が全力を挙げて洗っているところよ。
Investigation HQ is currently doing their best to scrub for the material witness related to that.
どうしたの藤田君。
What's wrong, Fujita-kun?
まだ俺はそのことを
I
信じられないんですが。
still can't believe it. Fujita let out a despondent cry and bit his lip. The material witness Tomoe referred to was the detective from Kakuji Station who had recently gone missing, Shiro Hanada. In fact, he was at a loss for words when Tomoe told him that his direct superior, Yamamura, and even Yamaoki had lost all contact with him. Fujita even shouted on the spot in agitation, "You bastard, I'll kill you!" He was so scattered that Tomoe had a hard time calming him down.
でももう間違いがない。
But there's no mistaking it. She found out about it when she contacted Kakuji Station after finishing up Reina Ryugu's counseling at NRIPS. That was when Tomoe first learned the police car she was riding exploded at the Kakuji service area. Bam! Explosion.
爆破？
Exploded?
どういうこと？車に爆発物が取り付けられてたっての？
What do you mean? You're saying there were explosives attached to the car?
いえ、鑑識の話ではどうやら燃料系にひびが入って車内にガソリンが流れ込み、揮発したそれらに警察無線の電気コードの火花が反応して爆発したと。
No. According to forensics, the fuel system was cracked and gas leaked into the car, so it reacted violently with some sparks in the cords on the radio, and that caused the explosion.
整備不良との話でしたが。
They're saying it was a maintenance issue.
ありえない。
Impossible.
そんなはずないわ。
That can't be true. Hanada was smoking the whole time they were driving to the Kakuji service area. If it was actually a maintenance issue, Tomoe's car would have exploded back when they were on the highway. And what's more, could the weak electrical signal from a police radio really ignite a fire? Even if the insulated coating were peeled off, that seems unlikely. No. Wait a minute. There was a similar case, half a year ago, when she and Madoka were heading back after a meal and a vandal broke inside and started the car. Bam!
それで彼は無事なの？
So, is he safe?
え？
Huh?
花田くんよ。
I'm talking about Hanada-kun.
私岐阜県警まで彼の運転で行ってきたのよ。
He drove the whole way to Gifu Prefectural Police with me, you know?
彼から連絡なかったの？
Didn't he make contact?
いえ。
No.
っていうか、ミナイさん、花田と一緒にいたんですか？
Actually, Minai-san, are you sure you were with Hanada? Fujita, what the fuck are you talking about? I was with Hanada!
こっちの車両管理の掲示板には、ミナイさんのお名前しか書かれてなかったんですが。
Your name was the only one written on the vehicle scheduling board. With that, Tomoe's suspicion turned to conviction. The person who betrayed them was someone she had always relied on, Shiro Hanada.
他にも竜宮レイナの聞き込み内容の際、あの子尾崎
Self-sabotage.
渚の死を知らなかったそうよ。
On top of that, there are inconsistencies in his account of the Reina Ryugu investigation. Apparently she didn't even know of Nagasaki's death.
それに半年前私が乗ってきた大石さんの車には一切手を触れたことがないって。
And she couldn't have been involved in the incident when I was in Oishi-san's car half a year ago.
それって本当なんですか？
Is that all true?
本人の言うことだから確証はない。
There's no conclusive proof without hearing it from the man himself.
でも
But who could she trust now? Her judgment on that was now completely different than it was just a few days ago. If she hadn't followed Reina the other day, she would have completely believed Hinata's report and continued to suspect her. As a result, even if he had interfered with Matsuoka's work, it would have been difficult for her to tell who was involved. And furthermore, if Reina came to Kakuichi and learned of Nagisa's death, she could be killed to silence her. Even though it wasn't a pleasant thought, Tomoe couldn't help but feel relieved that they had avoided a worst-case scenario.
とにかく今は花田くんの行方を調べましょう。
Anyway, we need to find out Hanada-kun's current whereabouts.
捜査本部にも報告して緊急手配をかけるわ。
Let's report to Investigation HQ and make emergency arrangements.
わかりました。
Understood.
じゃあ早速俺山村さんに報告を。
Then I'll report this to Yamamura-san immediately.
その前に藤田くん。
Oh, before you do that, Fujita-kun. Fujita was already rushing out of the room, but on Tomoe's call, he turned back and said, "What is it?" Then, Tomoe slowly walked up to him and... Even holding back a little, she struck the side of Fujita's face with a good hard punch.
何するんですか、皆さん。
What are you doing, Minai-san?
裏切りの罰よ。
Consider that your punishment for betraying me.
結構傷ついたんだからね。
I was pretty hurt, you know?
何の
What? Fujita didn't understand what she meant, but given the length of their relationship, he quickly realized it must be because of that discussion related to the case. That damn chief. Even though Fujita told him to keep it a secret from Inai-san.
それはその
Well,
でも心配してくれて嬉しかった。それは本心。
I'm glad to know that you were worried about me. Really, I am.
だけどここまで来て誰かにお任せって性に合わないの。
But I'm not the sort of person to come this far only to leave things in the hands of others.
だから最後まで一緒にやらせて。お願い。
So, let's do this together until the very end. Please.
皆さん。
Minai-san.
それに私だけ安全な場所にいてあなたに何かあったらそっちの方が大変よ。
Plus, if I'm the only one in a safe place, that'd only make things harder on you.
うちの亭主を危険な目に遭わせやがってって奥さん署内に殴り込んでくるかもね。
Your wife might come storming into the station and yell at me, shouting, "You put my husband in danger."
悪いけどそんな面倒を見るのは私。まっぴらごめんだから。
Sorry, but I'd rather not have to deal with that. Fujita was once again impressed, and Yamaoki threatened him, "If you don't speak honestly, I'll tell your wife. Got it?" Even though he gave in to the threat, it certainly was something he was concerned about himself. So, it actually felt refreshing to receive a blow from Tomoe.
とりあえずあとちょっと
For now, there's still more to do.
よろしく頼むわね藤田くん。
Counting on you, Fujita-kun.
はい。
Right. In any case, there was only 1 month left, and they'd spend that time pursuing this man, no matter what. Fujita formed a slightly proud salute as he made that decision deep in his heart. Moon.
姫さん、本当にやっちまったな。
That princess really has done it.
やってくれましたね。
Indeed.
正直、あそこまでとは思いませんでしたよ。
Honestly, I didn't think she'd make it this far. A man in a suit breathed a sigh of admiration, almost astonishment, as he poured some beer into Mino's nearly empty glass. It poured out a little faster than expected, so the table got splashed with the overflowing white bubbles, but Mino didn't seem to mind, and he drank it all at once.
さすがミナイさんの娘。ってのはもう死後だな。
The words I'd expect no less from Minai's daughter will go out of style.
むしろ今後はミナイ巴の父も刑事だった。っ てな言い方になるんだろう。
In fact, going forward, they'll be saying that Tomoe Minai's father was a detective too.
そうですね。
Right?
見ない2世ではなく初代見ない。父親は元祖見ないというところですか。
Don't think of her as Minai the second, but the first. Her father was just the pioneer of the Minai name. It was just a swap of the father-daughter order, but the man facing Maino completely understood what he was getting at and shrugged it off with a laugh. The upper ranks of the police department viewed her as a sort of hereditary princess, but clearly that was a flagrant mistake. Might be a better example of a pupil surpassing her teacher.
大したもんだ、本当に。
Seriously, it's amazing. They say that unexpected things often happen, but who could expect it to go this far? Honestly, a case where NRIPS and Prefectural HQ worked together despite their cultural differences was a great honor.
警察に限らず観光庁ってのは前例主義だからな。
And it's not just about the police force. It sets a precedent for government offices in general.
一度こういうことがあったとなれば、今後同様のケースを発足させるのが楽になる。
With this, it'll be easier to launch similar cases in the future.
そうしてプロファイリング捜査の手法を現場へ浸透させていく前線基地を築くのが本来の目的だったんだが。
And the original purpose of this was to set up a forward operating base to allow profiling investigation methods to penetrate into the field.
お姫さん、前線基地どころかそこから城内に攻め込んでしまいましたな。
But the princess didn't settle for a forward operating base. She directly laid siege to the castle.
敵さんはよっぽど慌てているようですね。
And it seems the enemies are scrambling to catch up.
先日もあの子を警察車両ごと爆死させようとしたくらいですし。
Just the other day, they tried to kill her in her patrol car.
確かに
Indeed.
半年前の爆破事件は脅しみたいなもんだが、今回は相当マジだったな。
The car bombing incident from half a year ago seemed like just a threat, but this time it was completely serious. The bombing incident last year involving Tomoe and Madoka certainly was a disastrous accident that could have caused serious injury, but the forensics team concluded that the smell of gasoline and the obvious handiwork would have made the situation clear to an attentive person like Tomoe.
吹っ飛ばされた車上荒らしはお気の毒ですが、それに気づかずエンジンをかける方が不用心ですね。
It's unfortunate the car was destroyed by vandalism, but it would take some serious carelessness to start the engine without noticing those signs.
むしろ仕掛けた本人が一番肝を冷やしたんじゃないですか。
In fact, the person who set it up might have been the one most frightened to see it happen.
脅しのはずなのに巻き添えになってはしないかと。
Thinking even though it was supposed to be just a threat, they might have gotten wrapped up in it?
そうかもな。
Maybe so.
ただ数日前のあれは聞く限りヤバかった。
But based on what I heard, the incident a few days ago was truly serious.
C4 プラスチック爆弾が警察無線の電源機に巧妙に仕掛けられて、それに燃料タンクが誘爆する仕組みだ。
C4. Plastic explosives were cleverly set inside the power supply of the police radio. That was the mechanism that triggered the fuel tank to explode.
無事に怪我もなく回避できたのは運としか言いようがない。
It was nothing more than luck that prevented this from ending in serious injury. She'd get in the car and notice her companion wasn't there, and knowing Tomoe, she'd undoubtedly use the radio to report it into Kakuji Station while waiting for him. Parking right in front of the gas station was a cunning choice. Even if she noticed the smell, she'd think it was normal given the location.
だとしたら敵にとっては結構痛い話ですね。
In which case, this must be a pretty painful story for the enemy.
今頃足跡を消すために躍起になってるんじゃありませんか。
And now, they're rushing to erase their footprints, right?
その前に抑えるさ。
We'll hold them off before they can do that.
で、秋山。
Anyway, Akiyama?
公安はどこまで掴んでいたんだ？
How far has public security gotten on this? The man called Akiyama drank his beer, then gently turned his gaze out the window to check on his subordinates guarding the surrounding area. Even among his longest trained subordinates, these were among his most trustworthy, and moreover, they were cleverly disguised so nobody would recognize them as policemen. Additionally, 2 of them were in a private room located farther away than any other, and Akiyama himself checked for the presence of listening devices and confirmed it was clean before entering the room. As a public security officer, he was especially cautious, and as a former member of public security, Maino completely understood the need for those precautions.
まず報告の前に、前野さん。
Before I deliver the report, Maino-san,
アルファベットプロジェクトってご存知ですか？
are you familiar with the Alphabet Project?
アルファベットプロジェクト？なんだ、それは。
Alphabet Project. What's that?
略称 AP。
Called AP for short. It's my initials. AP for short.
アトミック、バイオロジカル、ケミカルの頭文字を取った ABC でそう呼んでいるんです。
It's based on the term ABC, which is an acronym for Atomic, Biological, and Chemical.
次世代兵器研究会と言った方がいいでしょうかね。
You could call it a next generation weapons research group.
ああ、それなら聞いたことがある。
Right, I've heard about that.
あの小泉のじじいが各所に手を回して脅した末に、金をむしり取って立ち上げた時代遅れの研究会だろう。
That's the outdated research group that old-timer Kazumi set up by pulling strings and making threats, isn't it? Mino looked exasperated as he muttered to himself, that jackass. Mino was in the forefront as a public security investigator when the Lowell incident came to light. For that reason, just speaking the name brought him anger and hatred.
俺はな、今でもローウェル事件にはあのじじいが絡んでたと信じてる。
I still can't believe that old-timer was involved in the Lowell incident.
戦後数十年の短期間で財閥並みの資産を築くなんて、汚い真似をしてこなきゃ不可能だ。
But it's impossible to build a financial conglomerate like that so quickly without getting your hands dirty, especially several decades after the war.
それに奴はもともと軍医だ。
Plus, he was originally a military doctor.
データの流出とヤバい実験に関与してたって言われても、俺は全然驚かないさ。
I wouldn't even be surprised to hear he was involved in data leaks and unethical experiments.
全くです。
Absolutely.
それでも結局、検察庁の特捜部も追い切れませんでしたね。
Even so, in the end, the Special Investigation Department at the Public Prosecutor's Office couldn't take him down.
死ぬ前に死守報奨まで下された時には、何の悪い冗談だと公安一同抗議を叩きつけたくなりましたよ。
When he received a Medal of Honor before his death, everyone in public security seriously wanted to rise up and protest it.
ああいう輩は絶対ろくな死に方はしない。させてたまるかって思ってたのに、この前見事に天寿を全うか。
People like him deserve a bad death, and yet, he was able to live a full natural life.
神も仏もありゃしね。
Haha! Clearly God and Buddha don't exist.
お気持ち、よくわかります。
I understand how you feel. That wasn't lip service. Akiyama was speaking sincerely while pouring out another glass of beer. The Lowell incident was one of the most shameful cases during Mino's tenure as public security. Not only did they fail to solve the case, but a senior detective who was like a brother to him was murdered during the course of the investigation, and they never managed to catch the culprit. And what's more, the fixer directly dealing with the mastermind managed to evade arrest and passed away as a hypocrite. It was humiliating as a police officer and a painful blow to the pride of someone as career-oriented as Maino. Akiyama understood that because he had been in the same position. No matter how many incidents you get involved in, the wounds of failure never completely heal. That dutiful sense of purpose was his reason to exist.
まあそれはいいとして。
Well, let's put that aside.
AP なんて、要は戦争特需の旨味を忘れられない連中が、もっともらしく国防だ国益だとか言って、新兵器の研究ごっこをやってるやつだろう。
These AP folks are those who can't forget the taste of war. They're feigning the pursuit of defense and national interest to keep researching new weapons, right?
核なんて論外。生化学も国際条約の関係上開発なんて不可能。
Nukes are absolutely out of the question, and biochemical development is prohibited due to international treaties.
本気でやってるのかすら怪しいもんだ。
Actually accomplishing any of those seems doubtful.
で、それが
So, what about them?
そこで小泉のおじい様が生前肝入りになって後押ししていた研究がひなみ沢症候群ってやつでしてね。
So, the research old man Kozumi was pushing for in the later stages of his life was related to something called Hinamizawa syndrome.
その研究機関を乾村地に作って莫大な額の出資を行っていたそうです。
Seems he made a huge investment in the research institute built in that lonesome village.
ひなみ沢症候群
Hinamizawa syndrome?
病気か何かか
Is that some disease?
一種の風土病と聞きました。
I heard it's a type of endemic disease.
どうやら寄生虫だかウイルスだかが脳内に入り込んでその宿主の意識を乗っ取ってしまうなんて症状があるそうなんですよ。
Apparently, parasites or viruses enter the host's brain and take over their consciousness, with very noticeable symptoms.
で、その治療薬の研究を入江機関、表向けには入江診療所で行っているんですがね。
So, they're conducting research on a cure at the Irie Institute, or the Irie Clinic, as it's more commonly known.
そこで使用されている薬のデータの一部がローウェル社が現在開発中のプラシルの改良試薬に流用されていると。
Some of the drug-related data gathered there is being diverted to Lowell Inc. to help with the development of Placil. As he said that, Akiyama spread a document out on the table detailing the formula composition, with photos. Aside from the color of the capsules, the composition was very similar at first glance. No, it was identical.
どういうことだ？
What does this mean?
いわゆるコピー薬ってことですよ。
It's what they call copy medicine.
以前の薬は日本での事件があって以来、海外でもさっぱり売れなくなったらしいですからね。
Earlier versions of the medicine completely stopped selling overseas after the incident in Japan.
とはいえ、一時は精神安定薬としてそれなりのニーズがあっただけに、その改良には巨額の研究資金が投入されています。
But at some point there was a need for an ataraxic drug, so a huge amount of research funding was invested into its improvement.
しかし、それ以上に高い効能を持った薬が現れたとなれば、話は少々変わってくる。
However, if a drug with even higher efficacy were to appear, that would change the story a bit.
つまりそれが製品化される前にプラシルの新型に差し替えて発表しちまえばいいってわけか。
In other words, they plan to announce a new model of Placil before the competition can reach consumers. Akiyama shrugged his shoulders to affirm Mayuno's hunch. It was an egregious story.
まあ、ひなみざ症候群ってのは特殊な病気で、それ専用に作られた薬のデータをそのまま利用するわけにはいきません。
Well, the Hinamizawa syndrome is a very specialized disease, so data from drugs developed specifically to treat it can't be used directly.
ですから、彼らなりに分析して成分構成を汎用性の高いものへと作り変える。
Thus, they need to analyze the results to change the composition of ingredients to create a more versatile drug.
そして、その試薬を国内で販売するために厚生省の認可を申請中ってわけです。
And they're applying to the Ministry of Health and Welfare for approval to sell in Japan.
しかしプラシルの悪名は国内でも根強いからな。
But Placil has a famously bad name in Japan.
改良版とはいえそのままの名前で売り出せるとはとても思えんぞ。
Even if it's an improved version, I don't think they'd ever be able to sell it under that name.
ええ、
Right.
一度の審査で新薬の認可が下りるってことは確かにほとんどありませんが、薬事審査会の連中も13年前のことがあってかかなり慎重みたいです。
It's true that drugs are rarely approved on the first application. The members of the Pharmaceutical Review Board are likely pretty cautious after what happened 13 years ago.
実際少し前に審査会には申請を行ったのですが、結局却下されたそうで。
In fact, it seems they submitted an application to the board a while back, but were rejected in the end.
また臨床試験の協力を各方面の医療機関に求めているみたいなのですが、どこからも拒否されているようですよ。
And they request the cooperation of medical institutions in various fields to conduct clinical trials, but those pleas were apparently all declined.
当然だな。
Of course.
死亡事故を起こしたような危険性もそうだが、収賄を疑われるのは目に見えているしな。
Nobody wants to risk involvement in a fatal incident, but it's easy to imagine bribery going on. In developing new drugs, it's common to ask hospitals and other organizations to conduct clinical trials to identify side effects that may not have been found in animal testing. Of course, the content and the prescriptions are carried out in a careful manner in an environment where an authorized doctor can vouch for its safety. Since it requires the trust and cooperation of the doctor and the hospital as a whole to study a new drug, they're naturally reluctant to handle any high-risk items.
ただ抗精神作用をもたらす薬ってのは扱いが難しいだけに確かに貴重で、成功すれば巨万の富をもたらす金の卵です。
But mind-altering drugs are especially valuable because they're difficult to handle, so they're a golden egg that can potentially bestow great fortune on success.
医薬目的はもちろんですが、その他にも快楽や軍事利用、使い道は数多くあり、しかも良質とくれば価格はそれこそ青天井だ。
And not just for medical purposes, but for recreational use, or even the military. There are many applications, and if the quality is good enough, they can set any price they want.
そのためにデータ集めに関しては企業側も必死で、謝礼なども含めていろいろ実弾が飛び交っています。
Thus, companies are so desperate to collect data, including rewards, that they're shooting all sorts of live ammunition.
そんな感じに出来上がった研究データは、それこそ億単位の代物です。
Complete research data like that is worth hundreds of millions.
おかげで賄賂天国か。救われん話だな。
And so they're seeking salvation through bribery.
だったらそんなデータは製薬企業にとってはそれこそ垂涎物か。
Then all sorts of pharmaceutical companies must be drooling for this data.
で、その審査を通すためにまた賄賂をばらまいているのか？
So, think they'd use bribery to bypass the review?
いえ、逆です。
No, the opposite.
全く運動していないんです。
They're not lobbying it at all.
はあ？
Huh? Say what? Ordinarily, survey data from authoritative doctors is mandatory for approval. But doctors with fame and renowned ability are always in high demand from pharmaceutical companies. Thus, in order to obtain their cooperation, it's necessary to pay them a suitable reward and cover the research fees, and unaccounted for funds may be included as well. For that reason, it's nearly impossible to pass the approved process without lobbying the doctors involved.
なるほど。読めたぞ。
Ah, I see where this is going. Maino stamped the cigarette he was smoking into the ashtray as he said that.
その入江機関で研究中の薬のデータを流用し、コピー薬を作る。
They're diverting data on the drug being studied at the Erie Institute in order to make copy medicine.
その薬を同じ病、ひなみ沢症候群を患っている患者に処方して比較試験を行う。
The drug is being prescribed to patients with the same illness, this Hinamizawa syndrome, and conducting comparative tests.
そこで問題点を洗い出し、改良を重ねて製品化へと結びつける。
That way, they can identify problems and continue to improve it before commercial release.
そんなところか。
That's how it is?
ええ、そういうことです。
Yes, that's right.
AP 内の実験ならわざわざ臨床試験の許諾を得る必要もありませんしね。
If the experiments are being conducted by AP, they don't even need to get a clinical trial license.
ということは、審査会に申請を出しているのはそのダミーってことか。
You're saying the application they submitted to the review board is just a dummy?
ローベル社の製品に対するアレルギーはもう日本人の中に浸透していますからね。
The Japanese people have developed a hypersensitivity to Lowell Inc. products,
連中は日本での販売をとうに諦めている。
so they've already given up on selling in Japan.
むしろそれならもっと膨大な人口を要する国で販売した方が効率的です。
Instead, it'd be better to sell in a different country with a larger population.
ですから日本は製品化につなげるためのただの実験所。
So, Japan is nothing more than a test site in advance of proper commercialization.
つくづくふざけた話ですよ。
It's an utterly ludicrous story. In all likelihood, the drugs developed and manufactured by Lowell Inc. would be sold in foreign countries. They were no longer thinking of entering the relatively small Japanese market. Their interest was primarily in collecting data and studying the drug in clinical trials.
その実験を AP に潜り込ませるとはな。
Could those experiments have made it all the way to AP? It was a truly crafty and yet deeply ironic plot. AP, a secret organization established for national defense and national interests, was providing the legwork for the benefit of foreign businesses. Maino was tempted to grumble about how it was a masterful stroke of genius on the part of the trader that thought it up.
で、その研究データを集めて横流ししているやつがいると？
So, there's someone out there gathering this research data and running off with it.
誰だ？
But who?
ネタはまだ確定していません。
The intel still hasn't been confirmed yet.
ただ小泉のじいさま亡き後 AP を仕切っているのは官房長官の奥野、そして厚生大臣の千葉です。
But supposedly, after old man Kuzumi's death, the AP had been headed by Chief Cabinet Secretary Okuno, and the Minister of Health and Welfare Chiba.
その直下にいる入江高野とかいう研究者は、風土病の解明が生きがいみたいな連中だから除外するとして。
The researchers working below them like this, Irie and Takano, seem to devote their lives studying this endemic disease so they can safely be excluded.
黒っぽいのは奥野か千葉。
So the wrongdoer is either Okuno or Chiba?
さらに言えば奥野は今度の衆議院選挙で与党が勝った場合、次期幹事長の座は間違いないわけだから。
Come to think of it, as long as the ruling party wins the next House of Representatives election, Okuno is a shoo-in to be the next Secretary General.
前の厚生大臣様が一番臭いですね。
The former Minister of Health and Welfare is the most fishy.
立場的にも元医薬局の課長。
He was originally manager of the Pharmaceutical Bureau.
そして当時同期入省だった大沼茂が逮捕されている。
And right around that same time period, Shigeru Onuma was arrested.
黒っぽいどころか 真っ黒ですよ。
They're far more than just wrongdoers. They're completely evil.
千葉か。なるほど。
Chiba, huh? I see. After hearing that, Mino held his hand to his chin. Then, he pulled the notebook out of his inside pocket and flipped through it.
何か心当たりでも？
Something come to mind?
ああ、
Yeah.
13年前のローウェル事件ってのは確かにでかい医薬スキャンダルだった。
The Lowell incident 13 years ago was a massive drug scandal.
知っての通り、数年にわたる捜査の末、多くの関係者連中がしょっぴかれて、賄賂だのザル審査だのとマスコミ連中は大騒ぎしてたな。
As you know, after several years of investigation, many people were drowning in controversy. The media was making a huge fuss about bribery and illegitimate reviews.
だが実は他の面もあった。
But the truth is, there was another side to it.
どういうことですか？
What do you mean?
ローウェル事件では、さっきも出た大沼って当時の医薬局次長が逮捕されたが、この情報はもともとローウェル社自身が暴露したものなのさ。
You mentioned Onuma's ties to the Lowell incident. It's true that the assistant director of the Pharmaceutical Safety Bureau was arrested, but the information leading to that originally came from Lowell Inc. itself.
向こうの議会で追及された末のことだったが、それが元で日本国内でも事件が明るみになった。
It happened after Parliament's last investigation into the issue, but thanks to that, the incident became far more widely known across Japan.
実際そこで情報が出ていなかったら、国内の死亡事故は全部闇に葬られていたかもしれないとまで言われている。
If that information hadn't been released, it's possible that all these domestic fatalities could have been buried in the darkness.
まさかそれじゃ。
It can't be. You mean?
大沼茂は単なるスケープゴートで、実際には彼とつながりの深かった今村洋平、元外務大臣の勢力を弱めさせる目的があったそうだ。
Shigeru Onuma was nothing more than a scapegoat. In fact, he had deep ties with Yohei Imamura, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the goal was to weaken his influence.
当時強い発言力を持ち、アジア寄りの外交を推進しようとしていたその外相の存在が、それと反対する西側諸国にとっては目障りだったってことだろう。
Foreign minister at the time had a strong voice and was trying to promote closer diplomatic ties with Asia, but that presented an obstacle to Western nations that were opposed to the idea.
そしてその西側寄りの外交を支持していたのが、当時の防衛庁長官の奥野。
And the Director General of the Defense Agency, Okuno, favored diplomacy with the West.
さらに、彼の盟友の千葉だった。
And he had close ties with Chiba. In other words, the true objective of the Lowell incident was not to condemn the distributors of dangerous drugs, but to change the course of Japanese politics. To that end, they deliberately brought dangerous drugs into Japan that would cause problems, knowing that bringing it to light would politically eliminate the opposition party members who were connected to it.
そこまでやるのか。外交とはそこまで。
They'd go so far? Over foreign policy? As expected, Akiyama was completely shocked when he heard the horrifying truth. Compared to modern politicians who look the other way against minor corruption when it benefits them, this was on a completely different level.
だったら、なぜ千葉がそのルートの掘り起こしを？
Then, why is Chiba digging things up along that route?
自分の競争相手を葬った陰謀をどうして再び行おうとしているんですか？
Why bring a scandal that buried your enemies back to the limelight?
スケールの違いだよ。
Scale is different.
別に奴はどこぞの国の意志でなんか動いていない。
There's someone else who isn't even working for the will of this country.
おそらく知りもしないだろう。
You probably wouldn't even know about it.
だから大沼が捕まって自分が助かった理由なんて、ただ運が良かった程度にしか思っていない。
So I think they were just lucky that Onuma was arrested and they were saved.
そしてもう一度始めたってことは決まっている。
And they've already decided to start again.
実際にやっていたのは大沼じゃない。その医薬局次長の名義を利用した千葉本人ってことさ。
Onuma wasn't actually the one who did anything. It was Chiba himself, acting under the name of the assistant director of the Pharmaceutical Safety Bureau. What?
だから大沼が逮捕されて、そのほとぼりが冷めた頃になって、また始めようと思ったんだろう。
So, after Onuma was arrested, by the time things started to cool down, he thought about starting it up again.
それだけプラシル絡みの話は懐に入る金額が桁違いだったってことだ。
Compared to Placil, the amount of money coming into their pockets from this is an entire order of magnitude higher.
バカな話だよ。
How absurd. Akiyama poured out another lukewarm beer, seeking to moisten his dried throat. When it comes to matters public security is involved in, this level of international conspiracy isn't all that uncommon. Nevertheless, he was deeply shocked and felt ashamed of himself for his inexperienced response.
さすが警察庁の影の情報部と言われるだけある。
I'd expect no less from the covert intel department of the National Police Agency.
見ないさんはそれを掴んでいたのかもな。
Minai-san might have gotten his hands on this. Huh?
いや、なんでもない。
Never mind. It's nothing.
で、このことはお姫さんには
So, are you going to pass this info along to the princess?
荒川を使う。
We'll use Arakawa for that.
ただ千葉のことはまだだな。
Minus the parts connected to Chiba, though.
危険すぎる。
It's still too dangerous for that.
ですね。
Indeed. This was Tomoe. If she knew the full story of what Lowell Inc. was up to at this time, and that Chiba was the man lurking behind it, she wouldn't hesitate to arrest him. But when you're fighting against politicians, ordinary force simply won't cut it. In fact, getting caught up in something like that could even cost you your life. Just like her father.
ひょっとしたら連中の方から接触があるかもしれん。
Oh boy. Those folks may have already made contact.
奴ら姫さんの動きが目障りに思えて仕方がないだろうからな。
There's no way they haven't noticed the princess's activities and seen them as a roadblock.
おとりにしますか
Should you act as a decoy?
バカ言うなよ。
Huh. Don't be stupid.
そんなことしてみろ。俺は見ないさんにたたり殺されるっての。
If I did that, Minai-san would curse me to death.
ですね。
Right. Akiyama smiled and laughed, then used his lighter to light the cigarette Maino held to his mouth. After a quick hand wave to show his gratitude, he exhaled a full puff of smoke out the window.
無茶するなよ、姫さん。
Don't do anything rash, princess.
ここまで来ると敵はなりふり構わなくなってくるぞ。
After coming this far, the enemy is not going to care about appearances anymore. Maino pictured Tomoe's face, with that strong, earnest conviction that was always in her eyes, and smiled to himself. Even without her father, she was a bright woman. If possible, he wanted her to live a long life, and move ahead in the world. He clung to those selfless thoughts.
まあそんなわけだから例の件はよろしく頼むぞ。
Well, so I need your help on this particular case.
上からのストップに逆らう真似までさせて申し訳ない限りだがな。
I'm really sorry to make you disobey a stop order from the higher ups.
何を今更ですよ。
A little late for that, isn't it?
前野さんの秘蔵っ子なら私にとっては弟いや妹弟子みたいなものです。
This is your favorite disciple, Maino-san. That makes her like a younger sister to me.
部長にもうまくねじ込んでみせますのでお気になさらず。
I'll nail it into the director's head. No need to worry.
そうか。恩に切る。
Right. I'm in your debt.
使わずに済めば万々歳だが、この分だとそうも言ってられんからな。
It'd be nice if we didn't have to resort to that, but at this rate, it's hard to expect that.
確かに。ああ、それと
Indeed. Oh, by the way,
なんだ
what is it?
あとですね。
There's something else.
この千葉の第二秘書が塚田って言うんですが、なかなか面白いことが分かりましたよ。
About Chiba's second secretary, Sukata. Found something quite interesting.
ほう
Oh? The secret conversation between the two of them continued well into the night.
なるほど。
I see.
ローウェル事件の亡霊が今回蘇ったってわけね。
So, the ghost of the Lowell incident has been revived. Tomoe bit her nails as she scanned through the documents Arakawa gave her inside the car. The more she read, the more uncomfortable she felt, and became harder to keep her anger and frustration in check.
それで前野さんはどう言ってましたか？
So, what did Maino-san have to say?
厚生省の動きに探りを入れてるみたいです。
It seems he's pursuing movements inside the Ministry of Health and Welfare.
あと公安はローウェル社とゴグラの大学病院とのつながりに調査員を差し向けると。
And public security is sending investigators to find a link between Lowell Inc. and the Gokura University Hospital.
いよいよ本格化か。
At last, things are really coming together.
ああ、もう一つ。
Oh, he did say one other thing.
無茶はするな、だそうです。
Don't do anything crazy.
信用ないな。
What? He doesn't trust me? Don't do anything crazy, Tomoe. After that, Tomoe opened the passenger side door and said, "See you," as she stepped out. Instead of a proper goodbye, Arakawa lightly beeped the horn at her and then pulled out of the parking space at Kakuji Station.
さて
Now then. After stretching wide, Tomoe suddenly gazed up at the Kakuji Station building. Since it was the dead of the night, there were very few windows with the lights still on, but one of the few still lit up was the Joint Investigation Headquarters meeting room. After Hinata's disappearance, Tomoe confided with the Joint Investigation HQ members about what she knew so far. And even though it was unclear at the time who was leaking information, she apologized for the rudeness of secretly conducting an investigation of her own. Then she deeply bowed her head and asked everyone to lend her their strength once more.
Oi, oi, Hime-san. Nani aratamatteru nda yo?
Come on, princess, nothing has changed.
そんなに気を使われると、かえって水臭い感じがするぜ。
If you're that careful, you're treating us like strangers.
Eh?
Huh? Surprisingly, though, Dojima, Yamamura, and the other investigators reacted by saying, "So what now?" Tomoe was expecting them to admonish her, and that she'd have to dodge questions.
あんたが感じていた妙な引っかかりは、俺たちにもあった。
You felt that something strange was going on. You felt it too.
ただ、姫さんの言う通り、俺たちが全体で乗り出せば、おそらく裏切り者が誰かを突き止めるには、無駄な時間がかかっただろう。
But if we had tried to identify the traitor as a group, it probably would have played out just as you said, Princess. It would have been a waste of time.
もっとも、その裏切り者をあんた自身が気づかずに抱え込んじまってたってのが笑える話だけどな。
It is an amusing story, though, that you were right next to the traitor without even realizing it.
面目ないです
I'm ashamed of it.
いやいや、それだけ今回の山が一筋縄ではいかないって証拠さ。
Oh no, take that as proof that we're up against an unconventional enemy this time.
俺たちも今まで以上に腰据えていかないとやばいだろう。
Now more than ever, it'll be dangerous unless we can step up.
なあみんな。
Right, everyone? Yeah! All the investigators barked an answer to Dojima's question in unison. Rather than losing morale, they all looked vibrantly energetic, dependable, and kind. Tomoe gazed at them in awe and savored the joy of being able to fight alongside them.
みんな頑張ってくれている
Everyone is really giving it their all,
私もそれに応えないと
so I have to do the same. After muttering that to herself, Tomoe took a breath to raise her spirits, and then headed down the entrance hall toward the office of the 1st Division. Then she stopped at the break room along the way to buy a can of unsweetened coffee. But that moment... I'm telling you, fucking the vending machines in these advanced arcs are the true big characters. It feels like every time I log in to read Higurashi, we're getting talked about fucking vending machines. The true big players. She could faintly hear a phone ringing, and the sound grew louder as she approached the 1st Investigation Division room. Someone was calling the 1st Division.
誰もいないの
Is nobody in there?
まったく
Jeez. Tomoe let out a sigh and then rushed to the nearby phone. She thought about just hanging up on them, but fortunately the voice coming in through the receiver was one of the night shift operators.
もしもし、
Hello?
ミナイさんに外線からお電話です。まだ残っておられますか？
Is Minai-san still there? There's a call coming in from the outside line.
はい
Yes?
見ないは私ですがどちら様から
This is Minai speaking. Who might the caller be?
ああ、すみません。気づかなくて。塚田様だそうです。
Oh, sorry, I forgot to say. It's someone named Tsukada-sama?
ご存知ですか？
Do you know him?
え
Huh? She lost her voice, because there was only one person she knew with the last name Tsukada. But
おつなぎしますか？
shall I patch him through?
それとも。
Or...
あいえ
Oh, yes.
つないでください
Please send him through. Then the voice on the other end of the receiver switched from female to male, and she could hear the man say, "Hello?" That voice was unmistakable.
もしもし
Hello?
あ、見ないか
Ah, is that you, Minai?
すまん。どこにかけていいかわかんなくて、代表にかけちまったよ。
I'm sorry, I didn't know how else to get in touch with you.
塚田 先輩。
Sukata senpai? Hearing his voice was nostalgic. Even though she had gone years without seeing him and only recently reunited with him, Sukata's warm tone and the timbre of his voice were so distinct she could immediately identify him. However, right now, his voice felt somehow far away. Her field of view started to narrow. She could hear a high-pitched ringing inside her head. Sorry, I realize this is sudden. I got this phone number from Madoka-chan. And she told me you work at Kakuchi Station.
ええ。まあ。
Right, yeah. That was a lie. Madoka didn't particularly care for Sukata, so she never would have told him where to call. Bump bump. And besides, they had little to nothing in common, didn't they?
どうしました？
Is something wrong?
結構遅い時間ですけど、何かご用で？
It's rather late at night, but did you need something?
前から誘っていたけどさ。
Yeah, about that invitation from before.
今週どこかで食事でもしないか？
Would you like to go out to eat sometime this week? No. Go out to eat.
ああ、ちょっと話したいことがあってさ。
Yeah, I have something I'd like to discuss.
どうかな？
What do you say?
そうか。
I see. Tomoe recalled where Sukata was currently working, quietly thought over what it might mean. There was, indeed, something they had in common. And if this phone call wasn't a mere coincidence, then...
いいですね。ご一緒します。
That's fine. Let's meet up.
場所はどちらがいいですか？
What's a good place to meet at? Wow. It's happening. Oh man, what good timing too. I was about to be like, it's been an hour now, I have to get off, but... Put in a couple more minutes and we get to that nice clean break. Oh, we can't, get off my screen, man. Get off my screen. This will just have to wait. Alright. I'm gonna throw up a little BRB. I really need to stop saying I will throw up a BRB. Every time I say I'll throw up a BRB, I think of putting it on the screen. But the throw up, obviously, I will place upon a BRB screen. I'll get Silk Song set up, and then we're gonna do that for the rest of the night. As I said, this is gonna be the weekend of Silk Song. I'm really gonna bake into Silk Song this weekend. And it starts tonight. So I'll be back very shortly. I'm gonna get some water. I'm gonna go get my phone, because my phone's charging in the other room. And then I'll be back shortly.